Chapter 1, The Transfer I Was Never Supposed to See. I found out about the secret bank account 3 days before our anniversary dinner. Not because he told me, not because I was snooping, but because he forgot to log out. That's the part that still makes my stomach twist. I wasn't looking for anything. I was sitting at the kitchen island, our kitchen island, the one we picked out together at Home Depot 10 years ago, trying to finalize the catering count for Friday night. 20 guests. Close friends. His business partner. My sister. His mother. Of course, the dinner was supposed to celebrate 15 years of marriage. 15 years of we. Daniel had left his laptop open on the counter when he ran upstairs to take a call. A soft chime popped up in the corner of the screen. Transfer complete, $12,500. I wouldn't have looked twice if it hadn't been labeled **** Hawthorne Private Holdings, account ending 4421***. We don't have a Hawthorne account. At least, I didn't think we did. My first instinct wasn't anger. It was confusion. Maybe it was business. Maybe it was something temporary. Daniel worked in commercial real estate. Money moved around. Investments happened, but we had a rule. No major financial decisions without talking first. That rule existed because of year 3. Year 3 was when we almost lost everything. Back then, Daniel had invested in a restaurant chain with his college roommate without telling me. It's a sure thing, he'd said. It wasn't. We spent 2 years digging ourselves out of that hole. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. I postponed grad school. We refinanced the house. We promised, no more secrets. So why did my hands start shaking? I told myself not to click it. I clicked it. The banking dashboard opened without asking for a password. Apparently, he trusted his own kitchen. The balance loaded slowly. $284,763.19. I remember the exact number because I repeated it in my head like it might rearrange itself into something less devastating. $284,000. In an account I had never heard of. My chest felt tight. Like someone had quietly turned down the oxygen in the room. I scrolled monthly transfers. Consistent. Ranging from $5,000 to $15,000. Some labeled consulting. Others just blank memos. And then I saw it. Primary account linked. Daniel Hawthorne. Not Daniel and Emily Hawthorne, just Daniel. My face went hot. We had joined everything. Joint checking. Joint savings. Joint investments. We built that intentionally. Transparency was our thing. We prided ourselves on it. Our friends even joked about it. You two are disgustingly functional, my sister once said. Apparently not. Footsteps creaked upstairs. I closed the laptop so fast my wedding ring scratched the aluminum. He came back down smiling, loosening his tie. Everything good? He asked casually, grabbing a glass of water. My mouth opened. I almost said it right then. But something stopped me. It wasn't fear. It was instinct. If I confronted him immediately, I'd get a version of the truth. Polished. Edited. Strategically incomplete. I'd learned that during year 3, 2.so instead. I smiled. Yeah, I said. Just confirming the dinner reservation. He nodded. Good. Make sure my mom sits near the head of the table. She likes to feel included. I stared at him. Included. The word echoed in my head like a private joke. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel lay beside me, breathing evenly, one arm thrown across my waist like nothing in the world was wrong. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles and replayed the number in my head. $284,763.19. I started doing mental math. Over how long? How many months? What had he told me during those transfers? Work's been tight. We need to cut back. Let's hold off on redoing the bathroom. I sat up in bed. Last fall, I had asked about upgrading my car. Mine was 12 years old. The transmission was acting up. We should wait, he'd said. The market's unstable. Meanwhile, he was building a private $250,000 cushion. For what? Divorce, escape, insurance against me. The thought landed heavy. Daniel wasn't cruel. He wasn't dramatic. But he was controlled. Careful. Strategic. If he were planning something, he wouldn't telegraph it. And then another detail surfaced. 2 months ago, he'd suggested a postnuptial agreement casually, just to simplify estate planning. He'd said over coffee. I had laughed it off. Are we 80? He didn't laugh. Now that moment felt different, deliberate. I slipped out of bed and walked downstairs in the dark. The house felt unfamiliar, like I was trespassing. I opened our file drawer and pulled out the mortgage statements, investment summaries, tax returns. Everything was in order. Everything joint except whatever Hawthorne Private Holdings was. I took pictures of the account number with my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore, they were steady, very steady. By morning, my confusion had hardened into something else, not rage, clarity. I made coffee like usual. Toasted his bagel. Kissed his cheek. He looked up from his phone. You're quiet. Just tired, I said. He reached for my hand. Big week. 15 years. You excited? I held his gaze. Very. He smiled. I wondered if he knew that I knew, but if he did, he was a better actor than I thought. After he left for work, I called the bank, not our bank, the one listed on the transfer history. It took 3 redirects and 20 minutes on hold before a polite woman informed me she couldn't disclose information without being an authorized account holder. I'm his wife, I said. I understand, ma'am. But the account is individually held. Individually held, the phrase hit like a slap. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table. 15 years. We met at a 4th of July barbecue in Chicago. He spilled beer on my sandals and offered to buy me new ones. I told him he couldn't afford my taste. He said, try me. We built something real. Didn't we? Or had I just believed we did? I thought about the anniversary dinner. 20 guests, a long oak table at the private dining room of Bellamy's. Candles. Champagne. Toasts. His mother's dramatic speeches. My sister's teasing slideshow, and suddenly, the idea of sitting there pretending felt unbearable. If Daniel had been planning something, if that money was an exit plan, then I wasn't going to be the only one blindsided. He liked control. He liked narrative. He liked managing perception. Fine. So did I. I opened my laptop, pulled up the reservation email. Guest list attached. 20 names. I stared at it for a long time, then I started deleting. His business partner? Removed. His mother? Removed. The 2 couples he golfs with? Removed. I replaced them with my attorney, with our financial advisor, with my sister's husband, who happened to be a forensic accountant, with Daniel's cousin Mark, the only person in his family who despised secrets, and then I added one more name, Hawthorne Private Holdings representative. If they wouldn't talk to me over the phone, maybe they'd talk in person. I wasn't sure yet how I'd pull that off. But I would. By the time Daniel came home that evening, the dinner had transformed from a celebration into something else entirely. He kissed me in the doorway. 3 more days, he said. 15 years. Can you believe it? I smiled. Oh, I believe it. And for the first time since I found the account, I felt something close to calm, because if there was one thing Daniel underestimated about me, it was how quiet I could be, right before I made a move. Chapter 2, The Guest List. He didn't see coming. I didn't sleep much the night after I changed the guest list, not because I was unsure, because I was planning. There's a specific kind of calm that settles over you when shock turns into strategy. I've felt it before, once in the ER when a trauma patient rolled in and everyone else panicked. My brain doesn't explode under pressure. It sharpens. By Tuesday morning, I had a spreadsheet open. Column A, original guests. Column B, revised guests. Column C, purpose. Yes. Purpose. If Daniel had been quietly building a financial life outside our marriage, then Friday night wasn't going to be a sentimental toast over creme brulee. It was going to be an unveiling, but not reckless, intentional. I called my sister first. Are you sitting down? I asked. That tone means either someone's pregnant or someone's cheating. She said, neither. I think. Silence. I told her everything. The transfer notification. The balance. The individual account. When I finished, she didn't speak for a full 5 seconds. That's not small, she said finally. No, do you think he's leaving? I don't know, I admitted. But I know he's preparing for something. And you're not confronting him? Not yet. She exhaled slowly. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, I said carefully, that if he's been managing information behind my back, then I'd like a controlled environment. You're scaring me. Good. I asked if her husband, Andrew, could attend Friday instead of one of the golf couples. Andrew was a forensic accountant. Quiet. Methodical. Impossible to intimidate. He'll clear his schedule, she said immediately. Next call, Melissa Grant. My attorney. Not because I was filing for divorce, not yet, but because I refused to be the least informed person in a room involving my own finances. Melissa listened without interrupting. Is the account funded solely by marital income? She asked. Yes. Then legally, it's not invisible just because your name isn't on it. That was the first reassuring thing I'd heard in 48 hours. Would you be willing to attend a dinner? I asked. She paused. What kind of dinner? One where I might need someone who understands asset concealment laws. She actually laughed. Send me the time. Then came the boldest move. I searched Hawthorne Private Holdings. It wasn't some mysterious offshore corporation. It was a small private wealth management firm based downtown. Boutique. Discreet. Their website listed a client relations director, Stephen Klein. I stared at his headshot for a full minute before dialing. He answered on the third ring. Mr. Klein, my name is Emily Hawthorne. A beat of silence. Yes? I believe my husband is a client of yours. I'm afraid I can't. I understand confidentiality, I cut in calmly. I'm not asking for account details over the phone. I'm asking for clarification in person. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm implying, I said evenly, that marital funds may be involved in an account I was never informed about. And if that's the case, your firm may prefer transparency before litigation forces it. Silence. Longer this time. I don't attend private events, he said finally. It's an anniversary dinner, I replied. Private dining room at Bellamy's. Friday at 7. If the account is legitimate and fully disclosed, you can enjoy a complimentary meal and clarify that in front of our financial advisor. You're inviting me to your anniversary dinner? Yes. Another pause. I'll need to check our compliance policies. Of course. I gave him the details anyway. By noon, I had confirmation from everyone except Daniel. He texted me around 3. Can't wait for Friday. Love you. I stared at the message. Love you. I typed back. Me too. Red heart. I hated how natural it felt. That evening, he came home carrying a small velvet box. My pulse kicked. Early gift, he said, smiling. Inside was a bracelet. White gold. Delicate. It's beautiful, I whispered, and it was. That's what made it worse. He watched my face carefully. You deserve it, he said. Deserve. The word echoed differently now. Daniel, I said softly, can I ask you something? He stiffened almost imperceptibly. Sure. Are we okay? It wasn't the question I wanted to ask, but it was close. He frowned. Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? I searched his face. If he was lying, he'd rehearsed it. I don't know, I said lightly. 15 years is a long time. He stepped closer, brushing hair off my shoulder. I'm not going anywhere. The irony almost made me laugh. Later that night, while he showered, I checked the Hawthorne account again. Another transfer pending. $8000. Dated Friday morning, the day of our anniversary dinner. That wasn't random, that was ritual, which meant whatever that account represented, it was active, purposeful, and possibly nearing completion. Thursday morning, I called our financial advisor. Richard, I kept it neutral. Can you attend tomorrow night? I asked. Daniel thinks it's just friends, but I'd like to discuss long-term planning. Richard adored Daniel. He'd been advising us for a decade, of course, he said. Everything all right? Not yet, I replied. By Thursday afternoon, the guest list was locked. 12 people, not 20. Intimate, strategic. Daniel never asked to see the updated list. He trusted me with details that used to make me feel valued. Now it felt like oversight. Friday arrived heavy and bright. Chicago in early fall, crisp air, sharp sunlight. The kind that makes everything look clearer than it is. I spent the morning watching him. He was unusually upbeat. Humming while shaving. Checking his phone more often than usual. At 10:17 a.m., I saw the email notification pop up on his screen. Transfer complete, $8000. He angled the phone away too quickly. Confirmation. That evening, I wore the blue dress he loves, the one he says makes me look untouchable. Maybe tonight, I would be. We arrived at Bellamy's at 6:55. Candles flickered in the private dining room. Soft jazz filtered through hidden speakers. The long oak table gleamed under low lighting. Daniel squeezed my hand. "This is perfect," he murmured. "The first guests arrived. My sister. Andrew. My attorney. Richard. Daniel's smile faltered, just slightly, when he saw Melissa. "I didn't know we were inviting legal counsel," he joked. "Oh," I said lightly. "I thought 15 years deserved proper documentation." He laughed, but his eyes sharpened. Then Stephen Klein walked in. Daniel's color drained so subtly that no one else would have noticed. "I did, Daniel," Stephen said carefully, extending a hand. "You know each other?" Richard asked, confused. Daniel recovered quickly. "Professional acquaintance." "Of course," I said smoothly. "Since we're all here, I thought tonight could also be about transparency." The room shifted, not dramatically but enough. Daniel's hand tightened around his wine glass. "Emily," he said softly, warning in his tone. I met his eyes, calm, steady. "For 15 years, I began, raising my glass. We've built a life based on trust. On shared goals. On shared assets." The word hung in the air. Daniel didn't move. "And tonight," I continued, "I'd love to celebrate that openness." Silence wrapped around the table like fog. Stephen Klein cleared his throat. Daniel set his glass down very slowly. "Emily," he said quietly, "what exactly are you doing?" I smiled, "Changing the guest list." And for the first time all week, he looked unsure. Chapter 3. The toast that stopped the room. There's a specific kind of silence that only exists in expensive restaurants. It's polished, controlled, even the air feels curated. That's the silence that settled over our anniversary table when I set my wine glass down and remained standing. Daniel was still seated. That detail mattered. He looked up at me, jaw tight but expression composed. 15 years in corporate negotiations had trained him well, but this wasn't a boardroom, this was our marriage. I lifted my glass slightly. "I just want to say something before dinner starts." A few polite smiles circled the table. My sister leaned back in her chair, watching me like she was observing a chess match already 3 moves ahead. Daniel gave a small nod. "Of course." His voice was steady, mine was steadier. 15 years ago, Daniel and I promised each other something very simple. I began. "No secrets. Especially not about the things that build, or break, a life together." Richard, our financial advisor, shifted slightly in his chair. Melissa didn't move at all. Daniel forced a soft chuckle. "Emily, if this is about me hiding your birthday gift again, it's not," I said gently, and that's when the room changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. A printout, transfer confirmation. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. "I learned something this week," I continued. 3 days before tonight, actually. By accident. Daniel's fingers curled around the edge of the table. I finally looked at him, when a transfer notification popped up on your laptop. There it was, the first crack, small, almost invisible, but I saw it. He blinked once. "Slow, Emily," he said quietly, "this isn't the time." "I think it is." Stephen Klein shifted uncomfortably. I turned slightly toward him. "Mr. Klein, thank you for joining us. I imagine this is unusual." His voice was careful. "Extremely." Daniel stood up now, not abruptly, deliberately. "Can we talk outside?" he asked, low enough that only I could hear. I shook my head. No, the word landed harder than I expected. "For 15 years, I said, louder now, "we've had joint accounts. Joint investments. Joint everything. Except, apparently, Hawthorne Private Holdings." A murmur flickered across the table. Richard frowned. "Daniel?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "It's an investment vehicle," he said evenly. "Short-term liquidity management." "That holds $284,000? I asked. The number echoed. $284,000. You could feel the math happening in people's heads. Andrew leaned forward slightly. Melissa remained perfectly still. Daniel exhaled slowly. "It's strategic. Not secret." "Then why wasn't I aware of it?" Silence, not the curated restaurant kind, the human kind, uncomfortable, heavy. "Because," Daniel said carefully, "sometimes it's easier to move quickly without overcomplicating decisions." Overcomplicating. My pulse spiked, but my voice didn't. "By overcomplicating, do you mean informing your wife?" A few guests avoided eye contact. My sister didn't. She was watching Daniel, waiting. He turned slightly toward the table. "I didn't intend to hide anything. It was temporary. For how long? Andrew asked calmly. Daniel shot him a look. Andrew didn't flinch. Stephen cleared his throat. If I may, client confidentiality restricts what I can discuss. I'm not asking for numbers, I said. I already have those. Daniel looked at me sharply. Yes, I continued. I documented everything before coming here. That landed hard. For the first time, his composure slipped. Emily, he said through clenched teeth, you went through my accounts? I went through the transfer notification that appeared on a shared kitchen counter. The room was no longer pretending to be neutral. This wasn't a toast anymore. It was an exposure. I softened my tone deliberately. Daniel, I need you to answer one thing. Was that account funded with marital income? Richard's eyes widened slightly, because that was the legal hinge. Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Yes, he said finally, the word barely audible. Melissa spoke for the first time. Then it constitutes shared assets under Illinois law. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Daniel turned to her. Are we litigating at an anniversary dinner now? No, I said quietly. We're clarifying. He looked back at me. Anger flickered now, not explosive, contained. You blindsided me. The irony almost stole my breath. I blindsided you? You could have talked to me. I tried, I said softly. When I asked if we were okay. That hit. He remembered. I saw it, the moment replaying behind his eyes. I'm not leaving you, he said suddenly. The room stilled again. There it was, the unspoken fear finally given shape. I never said you were, I replied, but you thought it. He shot back. I didn't deny it, because I had. For 3 days straight. Andrew spoke again, measured. What was the intended purpose of the account? Daniel's jaw tightened. It was a contingency fund. For what? I asked. He hesitated, and in that pause, everything shifted. A potential restructuring, he said carefully. With whom? Melissa asked. With myself. I stared at him. Restructuring what, Daniel? He looked at the table, then at Stephen, then finally at me. Our marriage, he said. There it was, not divorce, not yet, but planning, preparing, positioning. The air left my lungs slowly. So you were building an exit, I said. No, he said quickly. I was building protection. From me? His silence was answer enough. My voice didn't shake, but something inside me settled, cold, clear. You thought I would come after you financially. I thought, he said, that if things ever deteriorated, I needed leverage. Leverage. In a marriage. My sister inhaled sharply. Richard looked stunned. Stephen looked like he wanted to disappear. I set my glass down carefully. For 15 years, I said quietly, I've contributed equally. I've supported your risks. I postponed my own career moves for stability. And you were building leverage? Daniel's voice lowered. I watched my father lose everything in his divorce. I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like that. So you made me the potential enemy. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, he didn't look strategic. He looked afraid. The room had stopped pretending to breathe. No clinking glasses. No background jazz. Just truth, and it was ugly. I didn't want to use it, he said, but you were ready to. Silence. Then I did the one thing he didn't expect. I nodded. Okay. The word confused him. What? Okay, I repeated. Now we know. I looked around the table. This wasn't about humiliation, I said evenly. It was about clarity. Then I turned back to him. You prepared for a version of me that might try to take everything. My voice softened. So now I need to decide what version of you I'm married to. No one moved. Daniel's shoulders, for the first time in 15 years, looked slightly smaller. Dinner was never served. One by one, guests stood quietly, respectfully. Melissa squeezed my hand before leaving. Andrew gave Daniel a long, unreadable look. Stephen muttered something about compliance and exited swiftly. Soon, it was just us, candles flickering, uneaten plates. 15 years between us. You embarrassed me, Daniel said finally. I looked at him. No, I replied calmly. I refused to be embarrassed. Alone. And that was the moment he realized, this wasn't about the account anymore. It was about power. Chapter 4. The night we said the things we never said before. The candles burned low long after everyone left. Bellamy's staff cleared plates quietly. pretending not to notice the emotional wreckage still sitting at table 12. Daniel didn't look at me. He stared at the empty wine glass in front of him like it had personally betrayed him. You could have handled that differently, he said finally. I didn't answer right away because he was right. I could have, but so could he. I handled it the only way. That guaranteed honesty, I said. His jaw tightened. You turned our anniversary into a deposition. No, I replied calmly. You did. 3 days ago. That landed. We drove home in silence. Chicago's skyline flickered past the windshield, all sharp glass and reflected light. The city looked stable. Structured, nothing like the inside of our car. When we pulled into the driveway, he didn't get out immediately. Were you ever going to ask me about it privately? He asked. I did, I said. When I asked if we were okay. That's not the same. It was the doorway. He finally turned toward me. You assumed the worst. I prepared for it, I corrected. We went inside. The house felt different, not broken, but exposed. He took off his jacket slowly and draped it over the kitchen chair. I wasn't planning to leave you, he said again. I studied him. Then what were you planning? He exhaled sharply. I was planning for possibility. Possibility of what, Daniel? He ran a hand through his hair, something he only does when he's genuinely unsettled. You've changed, he said quietly. That surprised me. How? You're more independent than you used to be. More self-contained. I stared at him. That's your justification? No, he snapped. It's context. For building a financial safety net without telling me? For not feeling blindsided if you ever decided you didn't need me anymore. The words hung there raw, unexpected. I have never given you a reason to believe that, I said. You didn't have to, he replied. I watched my mother destroy my father financially. I watched him beg lawyers for scraps. I promised myself I would never sit powerless in a room like that. This isn't your parents' marriage. Every marriage thinks that. Silence stretched between us. For the first time that night, the anger in his voice wasn't defensive. It was scared. You think I'd ruin you? I asked. I think, he said carefully, that when people feel betrayed, they stop playing fair. I let that sit. And you were planning for my betrayal before it ever happened. Yes. The honesty of it knocked something loose inside me. So all this time, I said slowly, you've been quietly preparing for a war I didn't even know we were fighting. He didn't deny it. I walked to the kitchen island, the same island where this started. I postponed grad school when your restaurant investment collapsed, I said. I worked double shifts so we wouldn't default. I stood next to you at every risk. I know that. Then when did I become the threat? He hesitated. Not you, he said. The future. That's not an answer. He leaned against the counter, facing me now. When you started talking about going back to school again. When you reconnected with colleagues. When you became less dependent. The word hit like a slap. Less dependent? I repeated, I didn't mean it like that. But you said it. He closed his eyes briefly. I built that account when you started building yourself. The room went very still, not because of money, because of truth. You were protecting yourself, I said slowly, from the possibility that I might outgrow you. His silence confirmed it. 15 years, and this was the insecurity sitting underneath it. You thought if I became stronger, I whispered, I'd leave. I thought if you became stronger, he said, you'd realize you didn't need me. There it was, not greed, not infidelity, fear, male pride dressed up as financial strategy. I felt something unexpected then, not fury, sadness. You never asked me, I said quietly. I couldn't. Why? Because if you had said yes, his voice broke slightly. I wouldn't have recovered. That hurt more than the account balance ever could. We stood there in the kitchen, no audience, no lawyers, no witnesses, just two people finally saying what we'd been too polished to admit. I don't want to leave you, I said. Then why expose me like that? Because secrecy creates distance. And distance creates exactly what you're afraid of. He looked at me like he was trying to decide whether to believe that. I needed you to feel what I felt, I continued. The shock. The uncertainty. The realization that something fundamental had shifted. His shoulders dropped slightly. I felt humiliated. I felt replaced. That word landed. He stepped closer. I wasn't replacing you. You were preparing for a version of me that didn't exist. And you prepared a public reckoning, he said. Yes, I answered. Because you understand consequences better when they're visible. A long silence, then, softly, what do you want now? It was the first time all night he asked what I wanted, not what he feared, not what he assumed, what I wanted. I want full transparency, I said. Complete access. No separate accounts funded by shared income. Done, he said immediately. I want couples therapy. He hesitated. That hesitation mattered, Daniel. Fine, he said. Yes. And I want you to admit that you built that account because you were afraid of losing control. He swallowed. I built it, he said slowly, because I was afraid of being powerless. Against me. Yes. The honesty was ugly, but it was clean. We stood there for a long time. No shouting. No dramatic ultimatums, just truth. Finally, he asked the question I knew was coming. Are you filing for divorce? I looked at him, really looked at him, the man who spilled beer on my sandals 15 years ago. The man who held my hand during my father's funeral. The man who just admitted he was afraid of being left behind. No, I said, his breath released like he'd been underwater. But, I added, if I ever discover another secret account, there won't be a dinner next time. He nodded. He understood. That night, we didn't sleep wrapped around each other like usual. We lay on opposite sides of the bed, not separated but aware. The illusion of perfect transparency was gone. In its place was something harder, more honest. Marriage isn't destroyed by conflict, it's destroyed by quiet contingency plans. As I stared at the ceiling in the dark, I realized something unexpected. The account wasn't the biggest threat to our marriage, silence was, and for the first time in a long time, we had none left. Chapter 5. The account I opened in my own name. Monday morning felt strangely ordinary. Sunlight through the blinds. Coffee brewing. The hum of traffic outside. If someone had walked past our house, they would have seen nothing unusual. Just another couple starting another week, but something fundamental had shifted. Daniel had transferred the entire balance of Hawthorne Private Holdings into our joint investment account the day after the dinner. $292, $763.19. The additional $8,000 from Friday included. He did it without being asked. He left the confirmation email open on the kitchen counter. A quiet offering. A signal. I acknowledged it with a nod, but I didn't celebrate it, because money returning wasn't the same thing as trust. Restored. We started therapy that Wednesday. He hated it at first, not openly, but I could see it in the way his shoulders stiffened when the therapist asked about control. About vulnerability. About power. Men like Daniel don't mind providing, they mind depending, and that had always been the invisible tension in our marriage. He liked being needed, I liked being equal. Those two things are not always compatible. On Thursday afternoon, while Daniel was at work, I drove downtown, not to see a lawyer. Not to see our financial advisor. To see a banker. A different bank. One where no one knew our history. No shared logins. No joint signatures, just me. The woman behind the desk smiled politely. How can I help you today? I'd like to open an account, I said. Checking or savings? Investment. She blinked slightly. Individual? Yes. There it was, the word that had once stung. Individual. I didn't feel anger when I said it. I felt clarity. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't retaliation. It wasn't a secret. It was structure. Healthy adults don't stay powerless to prove loyalty, they stay transparent while remaining whole. I funded it with my own income. My consulting bonuses. The hospital stipends. The side work I'd picked up over the years, money I had always folded quietly into ours. For the first time, I let some of it be mine, not hidden, not weaponized, just acknowledged. The banker slid the paperwork across the desk. As I signed, I felt something steady settle inside me, not distance, balance. That night, I told him. We were sitting at the kitchen island again, full circle. I opened an individual investment account today, I said. He didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly. Okay. It's funded with my income only. Okay. It's not a contingency plan. I know. I studied him. You're not angry? He shook his head. No. I understand now. Understand what? That independence isn't abandonment. The sentence surprised me. It meant therapy was working. Or at least landing, I'm not preparing to leave you, I said. I know, he replied, and if I ever am, I won't build a quiet exit. I'll say it. He met my eyes. That's all I wanted, he said softly. To not be blindsided. The irony didn't escape either of us. Weeks passed, therapy got harder before it got easier. We talked about his father, about control, about masculinity wrapped in financial dominance. We talked about my tendency to absorb shock quietly until I strategically detonate. That made him laugh once. Strategically detonate, he repeated. That's terrifying. It should be, I replied, but something shifted between us after the dinner. We stopped pretending strength meant silence. One night, about a month later, he asked a question that surprised me. Did you ever actually consider leaving? I didn't answer immediately. Yes, I said finally. His jaw tightened slightly. After the dinner? No. Before. That startled him. When you suggested the postnup. He leaned back. I wasn't planning to leave, he said again. I know that now. But at the time, it felt like pre-separation paperwork. He nodded slowly. I guess we were both quietly preparing. Yes, I said. Just in different ways. The difference was this: he prepared with money, I prepared with information. Neither of us prepared with conversation. That was the failure, not the account. 3 months later, we had another dinner, same restaurant, smaller table, just US.no lawyers.no accountants.no witnesses. He raised his glass first. To 15 years and one very uncomfortable anniversary, he said. I smiled. To not being enemies, I replied. He clinked his glass gently against mine. To not being afraid of each other. That was the real toast, not the one that stopped the room, the one that rebuilt it. Marriage, I've learned, isn't about preventing fear. It's about refusing to let fear draft secret blueprints. I still have my individual account. He knows the balance. I know his. We review everything quarterly now, together, not because we don't trust each other, but because transparency isn't a feeling. It's a practice. Sometimes people ask me, usually after a glass of wine, if I regret exposing him like that. If I wish I'd handled it privately, I tell them the truth. If I had confronted him quietly, he would have explained. If he had explained, I might have believed. If I had believed, the fear underneath it would have stayed buried, and buried fears don't disappear, they accumulate interest. The night I changed the guest list wasn't about humiliation. It was about refusing to carry confusion alone. It was about saying, if we are going to protect ourselves, we do it in the open, together. Or not at all, Daniel once told me. He built that secret account because he was afraid of being powerless. What he didn't understand then is that power in a marriage isn't about leverage. It's about mutual exposure, the willingness to stand in a room, imperfect and uncertain, and still choose each other, not because you're trapped, not because you're dependent, but because you're informed. The account he opened in secret almost became the quiet fracture in our foundation. The account I opened in my own name became something else. Entirely, proof that independence and intimacy can coexist, that strength doesn't threaten love, and that the most dangerous thing in a marriage isn't hidden money. It's unspoken fear. And now, we speak.